Om Stapakaya च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। सुधिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। So just to keep in mind, we are discussing the objections raised by Prabhakara and Advaitins' reply, Shankaracharya's refutation of Prabhakara's arguments. And before that, in the fourth sutra, we began with a summary of the Bhatta school of Mimamsa and its objections to Vedanta and the Bhashyam's response, and then the Vrittikara and their views, and Advaitin's response, the Prabhakara. One important aspect of Prabhakara is that he wants to reduce all Vedanta Vakyas into some kind of a Manasi Kriya. So Manasi Kriya are four types. One is Sambadrupam, that is Mana is small, Ananta, Alpam, and Vishwadeva is Ananta. So meditating Mana as Vishwadeva. So through that meditation you get spiritual results. That's only Adhyasa, where you focus mind on Aditya. So I mean Aditya Brahma Drishti. Fourth one is Kriyarupa, Samvargali, like Vayurvava Samvargaha, Pranavava Samvargaha. We already quoted earlier. That is Pranan itself is Vayu, or that is by meditating the Sankalpa, the Prana is Vayu. Vayurvava Samvarga, etc. Pranavava Samvarga. Then the fourth one is that we are discussing right now, the argument that Brahmajnanam is only helpful in a kind of samskarana kriya of Yajamana's mind, emotions and feelings. That is just like the Yajamana Patni, the Patnya Avekshidam Ajyam Bhavati. Ajyam Patni Avekshidam. Patnya Avekshidam Bhavati means the Ajya, the ghee that is going to be offered as Havish, become purified by this kind of samskarana kriya. So like that, all Vedanta Vakyas are meant to do a kind of samskarana kriya of the Yajamana, of the Karta. So that is the argument of Prabhakara. Ato na Purusha Vyapara Tantra Brahma Vidya Kim Tarki Pratyakshadi Pramana Vishaya Vastu Jnanavat Vastu Tantra. So this is, again he said that the reply, the refutation of Prabhakara views, and Prabhakara Madham is continuing now. The Brahma Vidya is not dependent upon human activity, not Purusha Vyapara Tantra. Purusha Vyapara Adhina, that's the meaning here. Kim Darhi, what is it? Pratyakshadi Pramana Vishaya Vastu Jnanavat Vastu Tantra. So what are the Pratyakshadi Pramana Vishaya? Normally when you see with your eyes, or when you perceive with the help of the Pancha Jnanendriyas and mind, then it is so obvious. So prasaktasya ka prastavaha prasaktasya ko nishedha. Aprasaktasya ka prastavaha aprasaktasya kodishedha. See, whatever is obvious to you, so explicit, so open and visible for everyone, you don't deny that, because you cannot deny. And you don't make a statement like that. You don't make a statement, I have 5 fingers on my hand, I have a head with 2 eyes. You don't make a statement. It is so prasakta, so explicit, so obvious. It's there for everyone to see. So you don't need to make a statement. So, kaprastavaka, there is no prastava, there is no statement, no proclamation. And konishedha, you cannot say, I don't have a head. So there is neither nishedha nor prastava. With regard to something which is pratyaksha siddham, which is there for everyone to see. And aprasakta, that also no prastava, no nishedha. So you don't, anything that cannot even be conceived of. You don't make a statement. Sasavishana Vandhyaputra. You don't ask anyone to write a thesis on Vandhyaputra. Because there is neither nishedha. Nishedha is necessary only when there is a possibility of a hypothetical affirmation of his existence. So, let's say, Vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam mrittiga ityeva satyam. So, why should we say namadheyam vacharambhanam, vacha alambhanam? Because people can very easily interpret and understand, misunderstand that these different pots and pans and different vessels made of mrittiga, are different from mrit. They can very easily say a pot is certainly not the same as mrit. And Madhvacharya won't admit that. According to Madhva Siddhanta, every pot, whether 1,000 pots and pans, 1,000 pots, let's say, are made of same clay. According to Madhva Siddhanta, each pot is distinct and different from each other pot. Because Vyapara Buddhi, Vyavahara Buddhi is important. But Advaitins will say it is only Murtiga Deva Satya. There is no distinction actually. Ramanujas will say they are the same, but there is a difference. You can say you don't use a big jar to drink water. For that you need a small cup, maybe made of the same mrut. So there is always Vyavahara Buddhi is there. But still it is somewhere between Dvaita and Advaita. So according to Panchabheda Siddhanta, everything in this world is different from everything else. So there is always a possibility that people may mistake that all these pots and pans made of mrut, they are different one from the other, different from each other. So in order to make the statement, to avoid that misunderstanding, Vacharambhanam vikaro namadem vikara. Only different manifestations. In terms of nama and rupa, vikara or change happens only nama and rupa. So when the vikara is in the form of nama, rupa, Vedantin call it vivarta. So that's all. It is parinama, but when you analyze it is vivarta. So there is a Sarvajnana Muni statement is there, that is Vyavastidesmin parinamavadi soyam samayadi vivartavadana. So when you analyze, first you think, well, the pots are different from, each pot is different from each other. So jar is different from a pot is different from a plate of the clay, made of clay. Or a garment ornament, a necklace is different from a ring, you may think. When Vyavasthides means Parinamavadi, when you analyze it, Soyam Samayadi Vivartavada, then you understand, well, after all, it is Vivarta only. Change in terms of Nama and Rupa. Change in terms of Nama and Rupa is Vivarta. But change in a way that it doesn't go back to its cause. When karya cannot go back to its karana, then it is parinama. See, oil cannot go back to oil seed. The ghee cannot go back to milk. So it's parinama. Parinama and vivarta both are two different karya-karana-vadas belonging to Satkarya-vada. Satkarya means karya already exists in karana. That is Satkarya. All these Ramanuja believes in Satkarya-vada, Brahma Parinama-vada. Sankhyas believe in Satkarya-vada, it is Prakriti Parinama-vada. And Vedantics, Advaitis believe in Brahma Vivarta-vada. And according to Naiyayikas and Vaisheshikas, karya does not exist in karana. It is called Asatkarya-vada. Where karya is asat, karya is absent in karana. For they call arambhavada. For them, every new effect is something totally different. There is no samavai sambandha between karya and karana, between karya and upadana karana. They don't see any connection between a cloth and tantu, or let's say a heap of gold and golden ornaments. Every effect, every karya is a new beginning, it is a new creation. It's called Arambhavada. So Kanada's Vaisheshika and Gautama's Nyaya, they belong to this category. And Buddhas believe in Sankhadavada with some differences. Sautrantikas and Vaibhashikas belong to Hinayana tradition. They are realists, they believe in Sankhadavada. And according to traditional schools, Shunyavada is a kind of Shuni Vivarta, but Shuni is nothing. The Shuni itself appears to have become these things, because these things also don't exist. So it is Vivarta. So like that, different views are there. So that will come for discussion right now in the coming few pages. Okay. So ato na purusha vyapara tantra brahma vidya kim tarki pratyakshadi pramana vishaya vastu jnanavat vastu tantra. So it is so obvious. So the problem is, when Purvakshins say it is Pratyaksha Siddham, they mean what is visible, what is experienced at the empirical level. When your mind and eyes go together, they perceive something by seeing. When mind and Tvagindriya go together, then they perceive by touching. The mind and Rasanendriyas go together, then they perceive by taste. Like that, all the five Indriyas, Rasanendriya and so on. So it is so empirically perceivable. So that is what they are talking about. Like Brahman is also like that, because Vedantic said already that Brahman is a Pratyaksha Siddha, Sada Pratyaksha, always there. It is Bhuta Vastu, it is Nitya Vastu, it is Satya Vastu. So now this concept is twisted by Purvakshins. This table also is Satya Vastu. So that's how they reduce it to this empirical explicit things. Table is there is a table. Like that, Tattwamasi. That's how they equate. So Vedantins will try to answer this question, this problem. Evam bhudasya brahmanaha tajnanasya cha kayajit yuktya shakyaha karyanu pravesha kalpayidum. Now this Brahman is, already mentioned earlier, Brahmavi Brahmaiva Bhavati, etc. And also there was a quotation from the first Prathamadhyaya of Brihadaranyaka, fourth Brahmana, that is Aham Brahmasmi Vichara. There is already been quoted Brahma Veda, Brahmaiva Bhavati, etc. So this quotation, this all that's what they are talking about. Evam Bhudasya, as we described till now, Brahmanaha Tajnanasya cha. Such a Brahman, Brahmajnanam and his knowledge, Kayajit Yuktya, you cannot in any way try to assert or argue that is a karya, it is the result of some kind of a samskarana kriya. That's the idea behind. And it is not the result of any kind of dhyana kriya. dhyana, upasana, meditation, like that. The patnyavekshidam ajyam, that is some kind of a dhyana. Looking at ajyam, that is ghee, or any other dravya which are going to be offered. It is purified through samskarana kriya by chanting some mantras in upamshu without other people hearing. So this kind of samskarana kriya. Like that, Brahmajnanam will purify Yajamana or Karta. That is the argument of Prabhakaras. Now, Nacha Vidikriya Karmatvena Karyana Pravesho Brahmanaha Anyadeva Tat Vididat Atho Avididat Ati. This is all Kenovarisha mantra is quoted here. So, So this Brahman is not a karma or vidikriya. Vidikriya means the kriya of knowing. It's not an object of, an act of knowing. Vidikriya karmatvena karya. So it is not a karya, the result of something. It is not something that is produced by this sort of things. So it should not be included within the category of karya. The reason is given, Anyadeva vididat atho avididat ati, it's all mentioned here. So vidikriya. It is distinct and different from what is known. It is distinct and different from what is unknown. So that shows it has nothing to do with vidikriya. Vidikriya also here means you do not understand Brahmajnana or anything. Just objectification. Something you know by using Panchajnanendriyas and mind in that sense. Idi vidikriya karmatva pradishedhat kenedam sarvam vijanadi tam kena vijaniyat iti cha. These are all different quotations. You are familiar with these mantras. Tatha upasti kriya karmatva pradishedho api bhavati. So upasti kriya. What is upasti kriya? Upasti means upasana, it is called. So Pratigopasana and Pratigopasti, these are different kind of upasana. All belong to this category of either Sambad, Sambadruva, Adhyasa, all these are different kind of Manasi Kriya. Tatha Upasti Kriya Karmatva Pradishedha. It is not a karma, an object of Upasana Kriya or Vidikriya Bhavati. It is not something to be known, then it becomes vidikriya vishya. It is not something to be realized through upasana, then it becomes upasana karma. Karma means object, what is to be achieved in that sense. For that also pramana is quoted, yat vaja anabhyuditam yena va abhyudyati idi avishayatvam brahmanaha ubanyasya Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasade Kenopanishad. These are all well known things. Brahman is not, that is this thing, not Brahman. Brahman is not a Vishaya. So it is not something that people do upasana to realize. It is not something, it is not a vastu, it is something which comes as a result of upasana. Nedam yadidam upasade. Now again, this each argument of the Prabhakara school is taken up. So the main argument that is coming forward right now is the refutation of the idea that it is the result of some kind of samskarana kriya. Avishayate brahmanaka shastrayonitva anuvottiriti ched. Now if Brahman is not Vishaya, from this argument, we already discussed this now, there can be some opposition saying that if Brahman not even Vishaya or Vidikriya, then what about Shastrayonitvat? What about this Sutra? Because we come to know that only from Shastra as the yoni, the origin of Shastra. It is, don't you think it is against yukti? It has got anubhavati. It is not tenable, it is untenable. The answer is no. Advaitins say no. Avidya kalpida bheda nivritti paratvad shastrasya. Nahi shastramidam taya vishayabhudam brahma pradipipadayishyati. Now, there is a big edifice of a huge block, a wheel, a huge barrier that is created by avidya. Avidya kalpida bheda nivritti. And what is the bheda nivritti? That this Brahman is different from I. That is aham brahmasmi or brahmaegatva. That anubhuti is blocked by a false negative, false view that Brahman is something, I am something different. There is a distinction, difference. This is the Bheda. And this Bheda is a creation of avidya. So this block or blockade or this barrier, this wheel, that should be destroyed. Avidya kalpida bheda nivritti parattu. Shastrasya. Shastra only destroys, removes that avidya kalpita bheda, the bheda which is created by avidya. So there is of course there are a few important things to be kept in mind. Avidya nivritti is a link to some human activity. So this can be an argument. Gaurabhakshins have argued this in some dialectical. So most of the views I mentioned based on Govindananda, which actually work on belonging to Vivarnaprasthana and Bhamadi Hiranda. The Prabha is a representative work from Vivarnaprasthana, Govindananda and Bhamadi and Kalpataru. These are some of the books that I refer to explain this. Now, avidya nivritti is something that is created. So first you learn about karma yoga, then anasakti, and then you attain chitta shuddhi, then you attain jnana prapti, and then how avidya is gone. So avidya undergoes this process of dhumsa, destruction. So anything which is the result of human activity, like the destruction of avidya, also should be impermanent. So mokshasya agaryatva, moksha is not a karya, not the effect of any human activity. That's why moksha is eternal. Avai moksha will become anitya. So is avidya nivritti an activity? That's a question. So avidya nivritti is not an activity. Avidya nivritti is only cessation of something that we thought existing. Avidya is not a category. That's the main problem. But there's a great mistake made by Ramanuja and others. Ramanuja's, if you go further later, you find Ramanuja's Sapta Anubhavaktivada, the 7 untenables of Ramanuja, is elaborated, see Bhashyam, and organized by Sudha Prakasha, Sudarsana Suri. It begins like Asraya Anubhavati, Tirodhana Anubhavati, Pramana Anubhavati, Nivartaka Anubhavati, Anivachiniya Anubhavati, Nivartya Anubhavati, and so on. So, all this we don't have time to explain now. So, the genesis of all these 7 untenables, Anubhavati means untenables. Logically not defensible. Now, it's all based on one problem, that is, avidya is a category, or mithya is a category, or maya is a category. No, maya, avidya, all these are not categories. Avidya is not an existing category. Avidya is something that we don't know what it is, still we are So long as we are within it, we realize it doesn't really exist when we come out of it. That is avidya. Maya is also like that. So ma gachadu, don't come here, don't go there, etc. So you're negating something. And ya is a pronoun that you use with regard to somebody. Yastri, Suyam, Sugdinam, Bhavaneshu, Alakshmi, Pava, like that you find. So it's a pronoun that we use to refer to something that we can actually visualize. We have some kind of understanding. So one that is positive, other is negative. Negation by ma, affirmation by ya. So what does it mean? It is there as long as you are within its jurisdiction. But then when we come out of it, we realize it really doesn't exist. Now what happened was, in Ramanuja's system, and most of the post Shankara, Vaishnava, non-Advaitic Vedanta schools, that's called Bhakti schools of Vedanta, you always find this recurring error. Avidya is perceived to be a category like Brahman. Maya is also a category like Brahman. That's why, Prakashatma Saraswati, in 16th century, he wrote the Vedanta Siddhanta Muktamali. He was trying to save Advaita from this problem, because people were calling Advaita as Mayavada. Maya is also an important category, like Brahman. So two things, they become Dvaita. A lot of criticism like that. So he wanted to take the extreme step of dismantling the philosophical explanation of this mystery of Brahman appearing in Jagat. Instead of emphasizing the Vivartatvam, he emphasized the fact that Brahman alone is the reality. Maya is not even Bhava Rupa. Just this idea behind. So here also, so you can see avidya nivritti. Avidya nivritti is nothing but realization of something that actually did not exist, doesn't exist, but we thought by mistake, by error, that it existed. So, but that disappearance is a permanent thing. It is not the result of any activity. The veil is removed. The removing the veil has nothing to do with what you experience after the veil is removed. Because even there is a veil, Brahman is real. See, the other side, if you remove the curtain, then also somebody is standing there. When you remove the curtain, you can see the person standing there. See, your barrier, your problem, your obstacle in seeing the person on the other side of the curtain, that barrier is removed. That is avidya nivritti. So avidya nivritti is not something the result of human activity. In a way, there is a human activity, but first of all, it doesn't really exist. Really, it doesn't exist. It exists only empirical, vyavaharika level. So when it's gone, what happens is the obstacle is gone. So that's why that state of absence of avidya is a permanent reality, because then you understand, aham brahmasmi anubhuti you get. So that is why, that should be kept in mind when you read this particular section. Where I stopped just now. Avidya kalpita samsarita nivatrena nityamukta atmaswarupa samarpanna mokshasya anitya doshaka. So moksha can be called anitya if you assume that this moksha is a result of the Shastra revealing it. That means when the vidya, which is responsible for the prapancha, that's gone, so you realize Brahman. So that should be anitya because the result of it. So again remember, avidya nivritti is not an activity. The absence of avidya is a permanent thing. So I already mentioned this morning, so I read this morning, Once you realize it is led you the Sarpa Brahma never re-emerges. That's important. Avidya is gone. Sarpa Brahma never returns. Once you know, it is true. Like that, when avidya is removed, then what you experience is a permanent thing. That's the idea behind. So there could be an allegation that moksha is anitya. Because moksha is the result of samsaritva nivartanena nitya muktatma surupa samarpana. The moksha is anitya dosha. So that is the argument here. Yasya tu utpadyo mokshastasya manasam vachikam kayigam va karyam apekshati. Idi yuktam. So if moksha there is something to be created, then he will have to depend upon some kind of activity. Manasika, vachika or kayika. Kind of activity he has to depend upon it. Tatha vigaryatve. Also it could be the result of change of structure, vigara, like milk becoming curd. Tayoho pakshayor mokshasya dhruvam anityatvam. So in both cases, moksha will become anitya in both the cases. What are the two cases? One is that is either utpadya or depending upon vachika or kayiga, anything. In both cases. So this is a description here. It's called nirvartyam. That is a technical word used. Something to be made. Or vikaryam, something that is to be created by some changes. So, in both respects, avidya will become anitya. That's why it's explained here. Tayoho pakshayoho mokshasya dhruvam anityatvam. That is, even when you try to assert that moksha is something nirvatyam, means utpadya, more than something to be created, or vikaryam, in both cases, moksha will become anitya. Tayoho pakshayoho mokshasya dhruvam anityatvam. We'll stop here. Nahi dadhyadi vikaryam utpadyava gadadi. So it is not vikaryam like dadhi, milk becoming curd. Or utpadyava gadadi, pot maker making, creating ghada from mrit. Nityam drishtam loke na nachabi apyatvenapi karyapeksha nacha apyatvenapi. So it is not apya karyapeksha. Apya also depends upon karyapya, means soka prapti, going attaining soka. So that also the result of yajna yaga, apurva, punya, and as a result of that you get soka prapti. That's why it is Nacha apyatvena. There is an old book, sorry, printing gone. Nacha apyatvena karyapeksha. If it is apya, then also becomes karya. Swatma rupatve asati na apyatvat. It is swatma rupatve. It is itself. So it cannot be apya, because apya means gramantara gamanam. You go from one village to another village. But if you are within the village itself, there is no another village. Why? Because Swatma Rupa. It is Swatma Rupa. Asati na apyatvat. So there is also a spelling mistake there, So it is Swatma Rupa. It is Swatma Rupa. Being Swati Saptami. It is spelling mistake there. So the anapyatvat. Surupa vidriktatepi brahmano na apyatvam. Because there is nothing other than Brahman. So there is no gramantara gamanam na apyatvam. Sarvagatattvena Nityapta Surugatva Sarvena Brahmanaha Agasa Seva. It is all pervading, it goes everywhere. So there is no question of it going from one place to another place. Nityapta Surugatvat. Napi Samskaryo Moksha Yena Vyavaram Upeksheda. So also it's no Samskarya. Because samskarya means you do samskarana kriya either by adding something, by removing something, bringing about some change, or you refine it. So samskaro hinama samskarasya guna adhanena va sya dosha abanayanena va na tavat guna adhanena sambhavati anadheya adishaya brahma surupatvat mokshasya. So you cannot add anything to it, you cannot take anything from it. Nabi doshapanayana nitya shuddha brahma surupatvat mokshasya. There is no dosha. So this is a very few important arguments here. Swatmarupate sati anapyatva, that is one. Then anadheya adishe brahma surupatvat mokshasya. So you cannot add anything to it, and you cannot take anything from it, and you cannot bring about any change. And then it is Swatmas Rupa, it is the same thing, all the same reality everywhere, same grama. So you cannot say grama, gramantara gamanam, going from one village to another village. That is apyattam. That also doesn't exist. So there is no question of going from anywhere to anywhere. So that is, I mean, all the possible changes are denied here. Swatma dharma eva san tirobhudo moksha kriyatmani samskriyamane abhivajjeda. So abhivajjete. So moksha is swatma dharma. It is atmanaha dharma. It is the quality, property of Atman. But then it is it's somehow tirobhudaka. So atma dharma eva san tirobhudaka. Moksha kriya atmani samskriyamane abhivajjite. So what is moksha? Moksha is the result of some kind of samskarana kriya. How? That is kriya. Kriya atmani. Kriya atmani samskarana samskriyamane. So samskarana kriya happens atmani, in Atman. That kriya, what happens? You purify, you remove the dust, you make it clean. Yada adarse nigarshana kriya samskriyamane bhasaratum dharma iti chedna. There is an objection raised here. So moksha is atmanaha dharma. But then it is tirobhuda. And it has to be cleaned. It should be made to undergo samskarana kriya. Kriya atmani samskriyamani. There also kriya is brought in here. Some kind of yajna, yaga, upasana, or samskarana kriya. Or again, this chanting mantra silently and all that. So what happens? So the example is given yada adarshi. In a mirror, nigarshana kriya. You go on, you just polishing the mirror. Samskriyamani bhasaratu. Then becomes clean, clear, brilliant. It reflects everything clearly. Chetna, that is also not acceptable. Why it's not acceptable? He says, Kriyasetva anubhatehi atmaneha. So, Atman cannot be subjected to any kriya. Atman cannot have ashraya in kriya. Atma cannot be dependent upon kriya, cannot be linked to any kind of kriya. Ida ashraya kriya tam akurvati naiva atmanam lepati. When kriya acts upon something, what happens is that kriya transforms that object on which kriya works. Otherwise it cannot be called Kriya. That's why the Asraya Kriya. When Kriya acts upon something, what happens? Tam akurvati. Then it does something to it, so it makes something else. It transforms. Naiva atmanam labhati. Yadi atma kriya vikriyeda anityatvam atmanaha prasujjeda. So if Atman is made to change, if some transformation happens through Kriya in Atman, then what happens? Then also Atman becomes anitya. Avikaryoyam uchyate, etc. Idija eva madini vakyani badhyerani. Then that will go against the spirit, the message, the spirit, the essence of such Vedavakyas like avikaryoyam uchyate, etc. Tacha anishtam. It cannot be accepted, it cannot be accepted by anyone. That cannot be the goal, that cannot be the purpose. Tasmanna swasraya kriyatmanaha sambhavati. Therefore, Atman cannot be subjected to any kind of samskarana kriya. So, because the kriya depends upon something. By anyasraya. Kriya is anyasraya, that is anyasaya kriya. To avishetva. So, and for that kriya, Atman is not Vishaya. It is not object, it is not Vishaya of that kriya. Because that kriya itself depends upon something else. So it cannot do any samskarana kriya on Atman. Because kriya itself depends upon something. And Atma cannot be a Vishaya of that kriya. That's the idea behind. The main point is some Shastras, Vedas do not make Brahman its Vishaya. Because Shastras themselves will teach you, when you realize Brahman, Pramana, Prameya, Pramiti, Tripudi disappears. Tvam is Pramada, the one who knows, and when you reach the experience, the Pramadrutvam disappears. So, Prameya and Pramana, Pramadrutvam, only disappear. Therefore, Atman cannot be actually the focus of discussion in Shastra, the way the Shastra focuses on something to explain it as if Shastras can make a clear description or definition of Brahman. Brahman cannot be described by Shastra. Shastras technically play the role of removing from our mind all wrong notions. That's an important point. So Shastras themselves constitute an attempt to explain. Rather, sometimes, in the language of great modern thinkers like Hiriyanna, who is in the authority of Dr. Advaita Ashrama, use more emphatic modern language, say. According to Hinduism, scriptures constitute a failed attempt to explain the inexplicable. A failed attempt to explain the inexplicable. Let's put it in modern language, that's all. What it means is, if books could entirely exhaust the nature of Brahman, then Brahman becomes limited. So Shastras only help us to remove all the wrong notions in our mind that we have in our mind about the reality. And when all notions are removed, what is left out is the reality. So that's an important point. Sometimes, this is described in the light of a sutra in the Kaivalyapada Yoga Sutra, Patanjali. Nimittam aprayojagam prakritinam varanavedastu tata kshetriyavad. So kshetriyavad is an analogy. Normally Patanjali doesn't use any analogy. It's fairly wrong. Nimittam aprayojagam. So he gives an example of a farmer. He is trying to irrigate a canal, bringing water from a nearby pond or river. So he may cut a canal. So what he is doing is removing all the mud from that half a mile long canal. He had not cut a canal. What he did was remove the sand. And the result is the canal and water flows in the field. Kshetrigavad. So I mean, nimittam aprayojagam. It is not actually helping him varanabhedastu. So it only removes the obstacles. And example, kshetrigavad. So examples you can find in modern philosophy also. When you are trying to build a statue of Buddha and you are presented with a huge granite stone and you are a sculptor, you work hard, and what you do if you want to make a statue of Buddha, what you're doing you're chiseling out all unnecessary parts, and the end result is Buddha. Like that, what we do through karma yoga, chitta shuddhi, or any of the rituals, these are different attempts to remove the unnecessary parts, removing the sand from the root of the canal. You are not cutting a canal, you look at the other angle, you are only removing it. So that is why it is stated here, So otherwise what happens, Brahman will become anityam. Yadasaya kriya tam akurvati naiva atmanam labhade yadi atma kriyaya vikriyeda. Some kind of changes happen, vikara comes, anityatvam atmanaha prasajyeda. Then atman will become anitya. So then pramana is quoted, avigaryo vimuchyade, etc. Idi chevamadini vakyani badhyerani. All these vakyas will have to be corrected. They become wrong, they become wrong or untenable. Tacha anishtam. Tasmanna swasaya kriyatmana sambhavati anyasayastu kriyaya avishetva natayatma samskriyate. That's the idea behind. Because every kriya is anyasaya. Kriya depends upon something else. And Atma is not a Vishaya for that kind of Kriya. Another example. That is from, the Shodasha Samskaras and all that. Nanu, Deha, again the Samskarana Kriya is against it, because that's a strong point put forward by Prabhakara, and also other philosophers also put forward this. Nanu Dekasaya Snanam Achamanam Yajñopavadikaya Kriya Dehi Samskriyamano Dushta. So all these ideas are taken. It's an objection against Advaita. Now when we perform Snanam, Achamanam, Yajñopavidadharanam, all this. These Kriyas, they had impact on Atman. Samskriyamano, Dehi Samskriyamano Dushta. Dehi actually means Deha and Atman. Atman existing in Deha. But Atman is not purified. It doesn't undergo any samskarana kriya. When you perform snanam, achavanam, yajñopavidharanam, etc. What happens is, our sharira may undergo, but our sukshma sharira, they call puryastha. Or you may say, Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, 15 plus 2, you can say Mana Buddhi, and Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, Pancha Mahabhuta, sometimes called Pancha Pranas, depending upon different school. But Vivekachudamani makes it more exhaustive study, it means Puryashtakam. That is Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, Pancha Mahabhutas, Pancha Pranas. and then this antakarna, mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, then avidya, kama, karma, all the huge collection of things together, 8 units together constitute Buddhishtam. That is Sukshma Sharira. The Sukshma Sharira will have some effect as a result of certain kriyas, Vaidya kriyas, including snana. Snana actually, in the Vedic ritualistic culture, snana is not just taking a bath in the bathroom. It means your Ashtanga should be below the water level, that you should perform certain, you should chant some mantras, then it becomes a kind of ritualistic snana. Avabhrata snanam is called at the end of a big ritual, the Bhagavata Saptaha, Avabhrata snanam, or any of the big ritual, puja and all that kind of thing. That is ritualistic snana. Achavana also. Achavana includes mantras. And these mantras, if you understand the meaning, you understand it is an attempt to purify not body alone, but also mind, thought, emotions and feelings, put in English language. Mana, buddhi, buddhi, vasana, samskara, sankalpa, all these are being purified by achamana. Yajnopavita means there also it includes a kind of ritual performed in front of fire with mantras. So the mantras, if you understand the meaning, you'll find that these mantras give us a big obligation to follow certain disciplines and rules. We are doing it in front of Agni, and Agni is where we are going to eventually. Everyone is moving to Agni, so Agni is Sakshi, this Sakshi. So in front of Agni, we are taking this vow, uttering some mantras. So they do have an effect, not on Brahman or Paramatman, but on the samskaras, vrittis, vasanas, all will undergo the samskarana kriya. So that's what Bhashyakara is going to tell you. So, nanu dehasaya snanam achamanam yajnopavita dharanam, yajnopavita kriya, yajnopavita kriya dehi samskriyamanaha dushtaha. This is an objection, it's a clarification is asked. So Bhashyakara says no. Dehadi samkhadasyeva avidya grihidasya atmanaka samskriyamanatvat. So what is undergoing samskarana kriya? This Atman that we falsely, by mistake, imagine to be connected to the body. So, and that is actually Sukshma Sharira. Sukshma Sharira is nothing but Atman functioning in Antakarana, creating so many vrittis, vasanas, samskaras and so on. Again, on Panchajnanendriya, Karmendriya, all these are linked to this Antakarana. So, all these are linked to Deha, of course. So every person who performs this snanam, machamanam, yajnopavita dharanam, etc. will have to say something about I am the son of this person, the daughter of this person, born in this place, living this particular part of the world, we call some kshetra, and born this particular day, son of this person, all this, you identify yourself with your physical body, your birth, because when you talk about you're the son of that person, you're part of Sankalpa mantras in many of the yajnas, yagas, etc. Sometimes you have to utter the name of several generations of ancestors. Otherwise, by indirectly Ubalakshana, you mention something which includes all the ancestors. This is all about Sankalpa mantras in certain yagas and yajnas. They also Dehadi Samgadasya Avidya Grihidasya Atmana. So, it is through avidya that we identify ourselves with this Dehadi. Atmanaha samskriyamanatha. They undergo samskarana kriya, that's true. But not Atman, not Brahman. Pratyaksham hi snanam achamanatihi Deha Samavayitvam. As I mentioned earlier, Snanam, Achamanam, Yajnopavitharanam, all these are linked to Deha. You have to, every time when you perform any of these, you have to mention, you have to identify yourself to be with this name, son of this man. It's all Deha connection only. That's why Dehadi Samkhadasya. Taya Dehasaya Tas Samkhadeva Kachit Avidya Atmatvena Parigrihita. Avidya Atmatvena Parigrihita. It is by avidya that you identify yourself to be this embodied being. So that's why Taya Deha Sayaya Tat Samkhada Eva Kaschit Avidya Atmatvena. It is by avidya, through avidya, because of avidya, that you identify this Deha Sayat Samkhada. The Deha, mind, buddhi, chitta, all these embodiment beings, you identify yourself as Atma. How avidya Atmatvenas Parigrihita means, Parigrihita means by mistake. Avidya Parigrihita. Avidya Atmatvena Parigrihita means by avidya, because of avidya, wrongly we identify ourselves to be this physical body. Samskriyate ityuktam. That is, of course, undergoing samskarana kriya. That's a very important point to remember. So actually every ritual does have an impact which can indirectly help us in spiritual life. Indirectly. Rituals always happen at avidya level. In the sense, Brahmajnanat Prak, as a Bhashyam statement. All rituals, including vasanas, okay, till you attain Brahmajnana. Before that, all these are helpful, including Snana, Achamana, Yajnopavitharanam, all these are helpful. Because they transform, they change, they purify our emotions and feelings, which can eventually help us to turn to spiritual life. That is true. But then again, Atmajnanam, Brahmajnanam is not a result of that. So that's an important point, that's a big point of difference. These activities are necessary, essential in some cases, it is helpful in creating the right attitude in our mind, which may eventually help us to remove obstacles that stand in the way of our jnana prapti and moksha. That is true. But that do not act as karana of atmajnana. That is the main point. Because if you interpret these rituals as the karanam of atmajnanam, then atmajnana moksha becomes karya, and karya is always anitya. So moksha is never anitya, it's always nitya. That's why sometimes you find these things are criticized, snanam, achamanam, all this kriya. No, Shankaracharya is not actually degrading or denigrating ritualism. It's a major difference, many misunderstandings are there. Shankara never says that rituals are wrong, or all these kriyas are unnecessary. What he's saying is, there is a higher reality beyond that. The same rituals, including snanam, achavanam, other rituals, if you perform without any selfish motive, that becomes the royal highway to realization. That also he admits. The only objection he has got is that the argument that these rituals alone constitute the central theme of Vedas, Vedic literature, including Vedanta, that he doesn't agree. That's why he never rejects Laukika karmas. He only rejects Vaidya karmas only when Vaidya karmas are interpreted to be the only central theme of Vedanta or Veda. That's only he objects. That's why it's a very, very important point to remember. In Brihadaranya Bhashya, that's why you find nothing wrong in performing yajnas and yag. Already go ahead. But then if you bring upasana, then slowly it opens the door for higher evolution. That's it. Because upasana will help you to go to Archayadi Marga, and that may help you to ascend to the higher level, and that may help us to go further in our spiritual evolution when we are reborn with these samskaras. That's the idea behind. Only Laukika karmas he accepts. Vaidya karmas he rejects only when Vaidya karmas are presented to be the only central theme of Vedic literature. Laukika karma nobody can reject, because if you look at the history of human civilization, I don't want to mention this, but it's part of because of one lot of criticism when we read about the arguments against Kriya, Karma, etc. Again, and remember, before Buddha, if you look at the history of the concept of karma, you find in the Gita, the karma is presented as something very universal, very logical. Not only that, karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasas smaran indriyartha nimudha mithyachara. So it's all mentioned here. Now, when Mimamsakas came, what they did, they interpreted karma only in terms of rituals. And that was the time when Buddha appeared, and he demolished the whole thing. He criticized the entire Vedic culture by way of criticizing ritualism. And then Buddhism also underwent many changes, not always for the better. Then Kumarila and others came, and they wanted to reclaim Vedic heritage. But they did not reclaim Vedanta. They reclaimed Vedic heritage for Karma Kanda. They reasserted the domination of Karma Kanda. So that's what Kumarila Bhattadi, Prabhakara and others. They of course reclaimed the land, the space for Vedic culture, but only for Karma Kanda. And then came, after Prabhakara came other non-Advaitic Vedantics, Mahedhara was an interpreter, and then Bhaskara, who was an exponent of Veda Siddhanta. Later, Upavarsha, Kashnayini, and many others came. Then Bhartu Pravancha and others came. They brought in a kind of what we call either Upasana they brought in, or they brought in a kind of mixture of Jnanam and Karma and Upasana, Jnana Karma Samuchevada. And then Shankara came. So what he did was, he projected a philosophical universal dimensions of Vedic literature, Upanishad, Vedanta, Vakyas. And that's why you find him taking up his cultures against ritualism. He never denied rituals for those who can start their spiritual life only with rituals. But he denied the idea that rituals alone constitute the central theme of Vedic literature. That's why you find here reflections of that attitude. That's the timeline should be kept in mind when we read this commentary. So, taya deha saya tas samkhada eva kaschit avidyaya atmatvena parigrihita. Samskriyadi yuktam. What is that avidyaya parigrihita? The sharira, indriya, antakarana, karma, vritti, samskara, sankalpa, the entire what do we call it, sharira, that is sthula sharira and sukshma sharira. Of course, karana sharira, avidya is there, that is also included. They get purified, that's all. Ita dehasraya chikitsa nimittena dhatu samyena tasamkhadasya tadabhimaninaha arogya phalam aham aroga iti yatra buddhi utpadyati evam snana achamana yajnapavidadina aham shuddha samskritaha iti yatra buddhi utpadyati sa samskriyati. So just like an example is taken from Ayurveda. So dhatu samya. When the dhatu samya is disturbed, you get these problems. Samadosha samadhischa samadhatu malakriya prasanna atmendriya manaha susthaga idya vidhiyate. This Charaka Sutras. So who is a healthy person? Samadosha samadhischa samadhatu malakriya. Physical health is defined. And then mental health is prasanna atmendriya manaha. So when your body, your mind, your indriyas, atma for Ayurveda means body, in the state of prasanna, a kind of inherent, natural, spontaneous, effortless serenity, peace. That is when your body doesn't complain complain to you, I'm here. When you get a headache, body is complaining, I'm here. When you get a stomach pain, body is complaining. Body is announcing its presence. So when the thought of human body is completely transcended, that is health. So this happens when prasanna atmendriya manaha. They are in a state of perfect equilibrium, samyavastha. So that's why Bhashyam says, Yata dehasraya chikitsa nimittena dhatu samena tat samkhadasya tat abhimaninaha arogya phalam. Again, only dehabhimaninaha. Those who don't care with the body, they don't care whether they are healthy or unhealthy. But those who are deeply identified with their body, for them, they feel, oh yes, now I am healthy. Because for them, I means body. Or I am unhealthy. So Dhatu Swami is disturbed, you undergo treatment, chikitsa nimittena dhatu samena tasamkhadasya tatabhimaninaha. That is deha samkhadasya, deha abhimaninaha, this idea behind. Arogya phalam, aham aroga iti yatra buddhi utpadyati. Now I am healthy, I am not cured, my disease is gone, roga is gone. Okay, this idea behind. Buddhi saha samskriyati. So he feels that he is impacted or this the treatment has its effect on him. Evam snana achamana yajnapavidadina aham shuddha samskrita idi yatra buddhi utpadyati. So also when you take bath, oh, I am fine now because body has become clean, so I have become clean, so I mean body, so sarirabhimana. Then we feel, well, aham samskrita, shuddha, idi yatra buddhi utpadyati, sa samskriti. Sacha dehena samkhata eva, tenaiva hi aham karta, aham pratyaya vishayena pratyayina sarvaha kriyaha nivatyanti. Tat phalam cha sa eva asnadi. So this such a dehena samkhada means he is identified with his body. So he then say, aham karta, I am doing this. Aham pratyaya vishayana means the one who is the vishaya of this aham bodha. That is I, the person, I. Pratyayina, pratyayin means the one who owns all pratyayas, all bodhas, all kinds of awareness, etc. Sarva kriya nivartyanti. That's the idea behind it. So what happens is, then such a person becomes affected by the samskarana kriya. And what happens? Tatphalam eva sachatna. So he alone enjoys the result of this. Tayoranya pipalam swadatti anasnan anyo abhichakasidi. Everyone knows, So Anasnin, Anasnan Anya Abhichaka, the one who is Anyam, the one who is the bird is sitting on the top branch is Anasnan. It doesn't eat anything. The other bird below it is Jiva. Is the he feels samskrita. I'm eating these fruits, so I'm enjoying and suffering. Sour fruits and sweet fruits, suffering and enjoying. So it is affected because they have abhimana. The other bird sitting above, on the branch above, Tayaranya Pipalam Swadati Anasnan Anyo Abhichakasiti. The one who is not eating anything, he is not affected by any of these things. That means he just manifests without eating. Now, who is subjected to the samskarana kriya? The one who has got sarira abhimana, the one who is like a bird that is sitting below the branch below. Da Suparna Savija Sakhaya, that is a mantra which everyone knows. I don't want to. Actually, it's a Rigveda Samhita mantra, which comes in Mundaka Upanishad. So many such mantras which are highly philosophical, found in Atharvediya Upanishad, but actually they are originally appearing in Samhita, Rigveda Samhita mantra. So that's a story that the analogy everyone knows, so I do not repeat. Tayoranya Pippalam Swadati Anasnan Anyo Abhichakasiti. Idi mantra varnad Apendriya Manoyuktam Bhokta Ityahum Manishnaha. So Bhokta is like a bird sitting below, which is eating bad sour fruit and also sweet fruits, suffering and enjoying. So what is that Bhokta? The one who is undergoing samskarana kriya by that is snana, achamana, yajñopavita dharanam, all these samskarana kriyas. Who is that? The bird sitting below. Jiva, bhokta. That bhokta, according to Kathopanishad, it is accompanied by mind and indriyas, and it is called bhokta. And it is feeling well. I am now Shuddha, Samskrita, etc. Iti cha. Tatha cha ego deva sarvabhudeshu gudha sarvavyapi sarvabhudantaratma karmadhyaksha sarvabhudadhivasa sakshi cheda kevalo nirgunascha. Sivadasya Upanishad. Idi sapadriga chukramakayam afranam asnaviram shuddham avavaviddham Kabir Manishi. All this mantra, I don't have to repeat that. I don't have to explain the literal meaning of this. That's everyone knows. So I want to skip those portions that you're already familiar with. You have been studying and teaching maybe for years, so you're familiar with the literal meaning. And my purpose is to project the Bhashya focus, especially the philosophical points. So we can have interaction now, I think. 15 minutes. What I mentioned should be kept in mind. If you look at the evolution of the concept of karma from Bhagavad Gita up to Shankara and up to modern times, and you find karma, the word karma was used by Mimamsakas in that very limited, restricted sense, that is yajna yaga. That is Dharagni Sahitam karma. So Yajaman and Sagadharmini performing Sapta Haivar Yajna, Sapta Soma Yajnas in front of fire, accompanied by Yajamana, invoking mantras. Now that karma, that kriya was what Jaimini, Shabara and Kumarlabhatta and Prabhagara had in mind when they used the word karma. That is a very restricted meaning compared to the word karma used in the Bhagavad Gita, which is much more ancient than Shabara Bhashya, Jaimini Sutras. When Shankara came, he was arguing, as we saw just now, his arguments with the Bhattas and Prabhagaras, two schools of Puramimamsa. both in a way representing Shankara, who wrote Bhashyam on Jaimini Sutras. So they were all using karma in the very sense in which Mimamsas always used yajna yaga. So when Shankara said that karma doesn't constitute, karma cannot take it to the highest level of spiritual realization, what he was talking about was these rituals performed with a definite purpose, Visam Sankalpa, mantra and all that, that's not the only central theme of Vedic literature. Vedantas got a higher meaning. So, Bhattas described the Vedanta Vakyas as subservient to Kriya Vidhi Vakyas, Vidhi or Pradisheda Vakyas. So it should be taken as Tutyarthavada or Indarthavada. And then Prabhakara took it one step further. He brought in this idea of some kind of Upasana Dhyana. And Vrittikara, who actually stands as an intermediary between, he also brought in Karma Yoga, the ritualism, but then he also projected Upasana. So whenever Shankaracharya refutes karma, he is refuting not karma as understood in the Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, but karma as defined by Kumarila Bhatta, Jaimini, Shankara and others. That should be kept in mind. Okay, now we can have interaction.
Well, this karma itself is having a Kriya Karaka Bheda idea.
Yeah.
That is Veda Vihita karma. Same applies to Laukika karma also. Then what is the characteristic difference between these two?
Laukika karmas are more flexible. Laukika karmas do not have a clear mandate or a structure prescribed in books. But all the rituals have a definite definition, everything is explained, very well regulated. That's only different. Laukika karmas, yesterday you already saw a lot of vikalpa is there. You go, you don't go, and so on. Anyway, that's there in Vaidya karmas also. But Vaidya karma, when you do it, you have to do according to that, especially Prabhakara. So Prabhakara makes it very clear that every ritual should be done very strictly in accordance with the principles, injunctions. Because Vidhi itself is the content and also the purpose and the supreme goal. There is nothing else. Sarga Prapti or Adrishtam Apuram are the bare secondary.
If this Vaidika karma cannot lead one to moksha, how this Laukika karma are
actually, yesterday we mentioned, there are three, 4 levels, Laukika karmas for one's own selfish purpose is the lowest level. Laukika karmas with some compassion for others, like Ishtapurtam, Dattam, all this. Dattam is, for example, give protection to those who need a protection. Ishtapurtam, all this will help a person to generate punya. He, of course, is done with a selfish purpose, maybe, but it's always better to do some good karma with a selfish purpose than doing nothing or doing negative thing. Because in fact in the Shankara Bhashya I will tell you why Vedas prescribe these Vihita karmas. Otherwise human mind will go in search of Avihita karmas. So one purpose of Vihita karmas being given as injunction Vidhi in Jaimini, in Shankara and others is that will protect a person from going in the direction of wrong actions, Pratisiddha karmas. So mind will be turned into some Vihita karmas and that can generate punya. That punya can generate apuram and that can help you to enjoy Surga Prapti. But a little bit of that samskara will be retained even Kshine Punni Makti Logam Vishanti. So when you come back to this word also, the effects of some of the punya karmas performed in previous life cycles will be left, and in the sanchita karma all these are accumulated. A fraction of the sanchita karma will start manifesting prarabdha karma, and then prarabdha karmas also are flexible according to sloka vartya. You know what happens? See, suppose we say prakashena arabdham karma prarabdha karma. So if often is compared to an arrow that is left above, an archer is shooting above. So now the arrow has to reach the target. Not necessarily. The arrow only has to extinguish its velocity. Arrow doesn't need to hit the target. It can be deflected, there will be storm, there will be strong wind. The flight of the arrow will be disturbed, it will be deflected in another direction. So it will miss the target. Or maybe there could be an obstacle may appear. If you do some good karmas, laugika good karmas, that will help you to turn aside the arrow, and that may help you from suffering that you are destined to suffer. Any kind of laugika sattvic karmas will create some obstacle in front of your suffering, or in front of your going towards some negative results of previous wrong actions. So that's, I mean, you can find in the teaching of Holy Mother, if you do something, the intensity of suffering will be reduced. If you are destined to be bitten by a cobra, you may be bitten by a water snake. If you are destined to be bitten by a water snake, you may be maybe some tiny ant or something. Something will happen, but the intensity will be radically reduced. That actually comes from Sloka Vartika. Let me show Suresh Vartika. It says, see, Prakashena Arabdham Karma Natu Sunischidam. There is a statement there. So there is no certainty that the arrow should hit the target. The arrow only has to extinguish its velocity. Then when the velocity is reduced or extinguished, the arrow falls down. That could happen by doing some good karmas, good laugika karmas. Good laugika karmas not without any benefit. They do have the benefit. That is Ishtabhutam that Tamal mentioned here. Because that can generate, and that will certainly help a person to advance and move further in the evolution of spiritual life. That's the idea behind it. Vaidya karmas also. Remember, I don't know whether you know it or see, these Purvamimamsakas were excellent human beings. I myself seen some of them. Very affluent, huge amount of wealth and land properties, but living very, very Spartan, ascetic life. Doing fasting so much of time, self-denial, self-imposed poverty. Their children will be living, but they themselves stick to the old principles. If you tell them this is what Vedas say. So the point is, they were very meticulous in their practice of austerity, their vows. Without taking bath, you should not eat anything. And without reading the Vedas, you should not have breakfast. So you take a bath, then reading the Vedas, but maybe after 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, then taking breakfast and lunch together. So whole life. What for? Because Vedas say that. And very austere. Fabulous wealth, but extreme austerity. I've come across these two important contrasting aspects of old Mimamsakas life. So they were the ones who preserved Vedas. Remember, a rote memorization of Samhitas were done only by Mimamsakas, because they had to memorize that. When they do this Yajnas Yaga, they had to recite the Samhita mantras. This is part of their existence. And to memorize it, they have to start the early days of their life, early years of their life. Memorize the whole thing. If they are not memorized, the Prakriti, Vikriti. There are 10 types of recitation and memorization, raw memorization. You may call it crazy, but it's a fact. Because it is impossible for those people to forget what they learned. If they try, they cannot forget it. So that kind of, from A to B, C, D up to Z, Z back to A, then A to C and C to E, like that. I don't know how to do the Prakritis and Vikritis are called. Different Jada, Mala, Ratha, etc. These are different things, not discussion here. So they were the ones who preserved this. And Kumarila Bhatta belonged to that category. So with all this staunch ritualism, he was so meticulous, he was so fanatical about preserving this tradition and culture. And when Swamiji praises them for preserving Vedic culture, indirectly that praise goes directly to Mimamsakas. And all the great Vedantins were Mimamsakas, all including Shankara. They were Mimamsakas. Traditionally they were Mimamsakas because Mimamsa alone makes it necessary for you to study the entire thing. Samhita you have to memorize, Brahmana you have to memorize to understand what to do, Yajna, Grihya Sutra, Soda Sutra you have to do. Otherwise we cannot perform any of the Yajnas and Yagas. Look at Shankara. We have finished now. You see, this little boy walked from his home, 6 years old, and he travelled all over India 4 times, all the way from Badrinath to extreme south, and February Sri Mandir to Dwarka. Okay, a huge landscape, South Asia. And he quotes from every possible book, including Mahabharata. This Murdesha comes from Mahabharata, Vidiravakya, not only Gita, but other portions also. Vyasa Gita all comes there. And he was carrying the entire huge Vedic corpus in his head, inside his head, not on his head, inside his head. And again, even the Upanishad mantra, you have to remember, these Upanishads were not distinctly categorized as a separate group of books before Shankara. When he wrote this, the Upanishad Bhashyas, that's how these 10 Upanishads, Ishagana, Gada, Prasna, etc., they became detached from the huge Vedic corpus. So otherwise, they didn't have a definite collection of books called Upanishads, no. So in his head, which contained all these Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishads, all the 4 Vedas, he detached and categorized, classified and wrote commentaries on it. So again Brahma Sutras he came. The Brahma Sutras contain so many references. Actually, Bhakti Prapancha Mata, Bhakti Prapancha Nirasa is the important part. Where Bhakti Prapancha's principles of, Veda, it's come to Veda. When you look at the tree as a whole, it is full, it is one. When you look at the branches, it's different. So Veda and Abheda, both you find. So forerunner of Ishtadvaita. So he did all this. For there are other things he did which I don't want to mention, 10 monastic orders and founding monasteries, installing hundreds of temples, bhashyas, upragaranas and poetical classics and many more things. You can read Sister Niveda's Web of Indian Life or Dr. Radhakrishna's 2nd volume. You can find to the end of Shankara School of Vedanta, one full page, what kind of man he was, and K.A. Munshi and Gandhi, and Swamiji himself. So the point is, so these Vedas were preserved by a group of people who, Mimamsakas, like Kumarila and Prabhakara, we refer to their argument, their teaching just now. They were the ones who memorized and kept the whole thing in their head. So before that, before Shankara, the whole thing was in one bulk. Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad. There were certain people who have memorized Brahmanas as such. But we don't, if you look at the Indian manuscriptology, the earliest available manuscript goes back to some 12th century AD, written manuscripts, not beyond that. That means they were all keeping things inside their head. So that's the uniqueness of this tradition. So we have to remember, Mimamsa were excellent people, very ascetic, very self-denying people, dedicated to a great cause. But then this idea that Vedas are eternal. Vedas teach you how to perform rituals and yagas and yajnas. That's already said and discussed in the Vedas. Everything else should be made subservient to Vidhi Pratisheta Vakyas. These are the arguments Shankaracharya criticized. Okay, thank you. Let me conclude now. Okay. Any more question you can ask? So light is gone. Any more questions? Okay, I think I should conclude. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.